Stephen Grant is the Regional Marketing Director with Lincoln Financial. He started his career in the insurance business in 1979. In 1996, he joined John Hancock Insurance, concentrating on long-term care insurance. In 2017, Stephen moved to his current position at Lincoln Financial. He will be talking to us about the reasons you would want to plan ahead for long-term care expenses and how these expenses can impact your expectations for your retirement lifestyle or the size of the legacy you would like to pass along to your heirs. Stephen, now that we have an idea of the types of senior housing and care facilities that are available, can you talk to us about the benefits of long-term care insurance and how it works to help offset the cost of senior care? What is covered inside a long-term care policy, assisted living, a skilled nursing facility, home health care? Stephen.
Well, that's a lot of question to answer, but we'll give it a shot. So let me just share this one thought with you, and I'm going to really focus in on the financial end of this. And you've heard this from all of the speakers tonight, but if I could just summarize it, long-term care is not a place. Long-term care is not a condition. Long-term care can be a life-altering event. And if it's left unplanned for, it can have catastrophic consequences to the people you love most. It can affect them physically, it can affect them emotionally, and it certainly can affect them financially, which is what we're going to talk about. So the financial end of it, there's nothing more that I can add to what these ladies have said, just a phenomenal summary of long-term care. But when we come to the finances of it, I've been doing this for 22 years, helping people finance long-term care. And for some people, this event is going to be a financial inconvenience, and for some people, it's going to be a financial catastrophe, depending upon how well planned they are. So it's an event that is going to affect most of us. We're going to be caregivers, care receivers, care supervisors. Long-term care is going to impact us one way or the other. Unfortunately, most people start their long-term care planning the day after an event takes place. That's the worst time to start to plan. You want to do this well ahead of time, even on the financial end of it. So you've heard the costs of care. So if I can just summarize, I was taking very good notes, by the way. So home care, there's basically three places where people get their care. Home care, assisted living, and skilled nursing are the basic models. There's certainly, as you heard, some other variations of that. So if I could just take home care for a minute, which by the way is about where 60% of care takes place, is at home. That can average anywhere from $3,000 to $15,000 a month, depending upon the number of days someone comes into your home to help you and the number of hours per day. So if we could average it out, it could be about $5,000 a month. Assisted living, you heard anywhere from $2,100 to $8,000 a month. If I can just average that out at $5,000, that's about where 25% of care takes place. So you've got 60% of care at home, 25% of care in assisted living, and then you got skilled nursing. If you were ahead of me on the math, 60, 25, that leaves 15% of care takes place in a nursing home. And for some reason, a lot of the conversations I have with folks, they want to dominate the conversation with nursing homes. And I say to them, if you'd like to, fine, but the likelihood of you going into one is not large. The greatest risk you have is going to be for home care and assisted living facilities. And by the way, if you break down that 15% of people who need care in skilled nursing home, 85% are which gender?
Women.
Women. 15% are men. So that may shed some light on also the planning end of it. So let's get into how do we attempt to control these costs, or how do we pay for these services. So there's basically three models. The first is traditional long-term care insurance, good insurance, been around a long time, 30 plus years. It has come under media scrutiny in the last 5 or 6 years, primarily because of increasing premiums. If you went back to 2002, There's $1 billion in traditional long-term care sales. 750,000 policies were sold and 100 companies selling it. You fast forward that to last year, 150 million, this is total traditional long-term care. 150 million, 75,000 policies sold, 13 companies are left selling long-term care insurance, traditional long-term care insurance. Why? Because there's really three major challenges with traditional long-term care insurance. One is if you died and never needed it, you feel like you've wasted your money. You paid for something that people never benefited from. It's like your auto or your homeowner's insurance. So that's one challenge. Second challenge is if I wanted to walk away from it, something else came out in the marketplace, it was a better fit to pay for the long-term care costs. You almost feel handcuffed because if you left it, it's like walking away from an apartment. There's no equity, there's no cash value. So people almost feel like they can't walk away. But third and most concerning to people about traditional long-term care insurance are the increasing premiums, of which you've probably heard. NBC did a whole report, Barron's has done a number of reports, Wall Street Journal, on these increasing premiums across the nation's an average about 90%. So that means that $3,000 a year you started out paying could very easily be close to $6,000 a year today for the same benefit. So that's had a huge impact on the traditional long-term care insurance. The second model is what we call asset-based or hybrid. That's an insurance that's gotten a lot of popularity now because the challenges that I just mentioned with traditional long-term care insurance have been met in the hybrid. The reason they call it hybrid or combo, it's a combination of two products. You're taking life insurance and combining it with long-term care insurance. It's solving a long-term care problem, but we're using life insurance to solve the problem. And I'll get into more detail about that. The third is what you've heard about is self-insuring or self-paying. Either by default or by design, people just say, hey, I saved for a rainy day, I'm in my rainy day, here's what I'm going to use my money for. And this could easily be a $500,000 event. If there's two of you, $1 million event. Not only have I been involved in this professionally for 22 years, but between my wife and I will be married 40 years next year. 40. I didn't say 4, did I? 40. And between the two of us, 3 parents died in a nursing home, and my mother's in an assisted living facility today, close to $1 million between the two families caring for 4 parents. So I understand it both on the professional side and certainly the personal side. So if people are going to self-fund this, it could easily be a $500,000 event, like I said, $1 million for the two of you. And there's probably many of you who could easily do that, and congratulations, job well done. So what asset-based insurance or hybrid insurance does is they simply say, okay, let's take a look at those assets that you already targeted to pay for long-term care, and let's reposition some of them into a hybrid long-term care insurance policy. And we want to specifically look at 2 things. What leverage can we create with your money, and what tax efficiencies can we create with your money? So that's the 30,000-foot view of the asset base, and I'll dig a little bit deeper. But all long-term care insurance really pays, it's comprehensive. It pays for long-term care A to Z, and that's what you want. You want to make sure it's a policy that pays A to Z. But here's a challenge. Now, as I look around the room, it certainly doesn't look like anybody's over 60. But if there is somebody over 60 in the room, let's say you're 62, anybody want to guess what the average age is people need long-term care? Say again? Nobody wants to guess. Just because you're being videotaped and you don't want to. So the answer is 80. So age 80 is the average age people need long-term care. So if a person's 62 today, and we're planning for an event 18 years out, a lot of changes can take place in the long-term care industry, right? Robotics is something that's under a lot of discussion. Where will robotics play? Well, let me give you an example. When I started selling long-term care insurance a long time ago, nobody ever heard of assisted living facilities. Those policies that were sold back 23, 24 years ago are paying for assisted living facilities today. Why? Because there's a clause in the contract that's called alternative services, which simply says, we don't know what the landscape's going to look like at the time you may need long-term care, and if those services are in your best interest, the insurance companies will pay for them. So that's very, very important to your planning today. So the way an asset-based insurance works, long-term care insurance policy, first it pays for long-term care A to Z. Well, let me just take an example. Let's say you have a 60-year-old person, and they have $100,000 in a money market, CD, low-performing mutual fund. You sold some property, you got an inheritance, wherever the money came from. And we simply are going to reposition that $100,000 into an asset-based life insurance policy or a long-term care policy. So the first thing that happens is if you changed your mind the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year, 5 years, 10 years down the road, and said, I want out, you get 100% of your money back, no questions asked. So if you put that money into it and something came out in the marketplace that was better solution to this problem, and you want it out, you could get all of your money back. So that's what they call surrender value. The second thing that's happened, because it's life insurance, by the way, won't get real deep into it tonight, there's 27 different varieties of life insurance. When I first started life insurance, there was 2, term and whole life. That has changed. There's 27 different varieties today. But the one most commonly used is guaranteed universal life. And that's because it's guaranteed. And it's one of the few times we can use that term. Those of us in the financial industry can use the term guarantee, but it is guaranteed. So it really answers all the challenges of traditional. 1, your premiums can never change. 2, the benefits can never change. 3, anytime you want out, you can get all your money back. So they've really met a lot of the challenges in the long-term care, traditional long-term care space. So the second thing that happens, if you died and never needed it, there's an income tax-free death benefit that's paid to your beneficiary that you typically 2 to 4 times the amount of money you deposited, depending upon your age and gender and things of that nature. So that's good to know, that if I invested in this product, never needed it, and died, the people I love most are going to get income tax-free long-term care or a death benefit. Okay, so then we come to the reason why people buy this. You don't buy it because you get your money back. You don't buy it because of the death benefit. The reason you buy it is to solve a long-term care problem. So what it typically does, let's just take that 60-year-old woman who repositions $100,000. She'd create anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 of death benefit, and she'd create anywhere from $475,000 to $550,000 of long-term care benefit. So remember what I mentioned earlier about leverage? That's the leverage we're talking about. So I invested $100,000, and let me just round it up, and I have $500,000 of long-term care benefit. So that's a 5-to-1 ratio, 20 cents on a dollar. So simply stated, for every dollar I invested, I now have $5 available to me to pay for long-term care services. So that's the leverage. And those benefits are paid income tax-free. Okay? So you are now all certified experts on asset-based long-term care insurance. There's only 3 moving parts to it, and those are the 3 moving parts. So here's a big question. How do I access the benefits? So, okay, Steve, so I got this policy. How do I access the benefits? Federal government got involved in this. All the major insurance companies agreed to the same definition. So it's pretty simple. They've identified 6 activities of daily living: eating, dressing, bathing, toileting, transfer, and incontinence. Once you need assistance with 2 of those, that's what triggers the benefit. Well, who validates that? Well, your doctor. We don't have doctors. The insurance companies don't have doctors. So the insurance company is dependent upon your doctor validating that you need assistance with 2 of those 6 activities of daily living. By the way, typically the first one is bathing. You can't get yourself in and out of a bathtub and wash yourself from head to toe. And second is dressing. You need somebody else's physical assistance to help you get dressed. So that's one way to trigger the benefit. The other way to trigger the benefit is a cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's, dementia, something of that nature. So your doctor validates that, and now that's what simply gives you access to that $500,000. So now what happens? Well, let me tell you what doesn't happen. Once your doctor validates that you need long-term care, the insurance companies don't get their checkbook out and write you out a check for $500,000 and send it on their merry way to you. I wish that was the case. I could have retired a long time ago. But that's not the way it works. The way it works is it's paid out as a monthly benefit. So again, we're talking about this 60-year-old female who repositions $100,000. She's got anywhere from, let's say, $200,000 of death benefit, $500,000 of long-term care benefit, and that would be paid out at approximately $7,000 a month for 6 years. You could take out less, you can't take out more. And these are, by the way, basics to long-term care insurance on the traditional side and on the asset-based or hybrid side. So it would pay out approximately $7,000 a month for 6 years. So this is where the planning part comes in. So I'm working with my financial advisor and I say, okay, so what should I plan for? What should I do? One of the things I always recommend, a good starting point, is let's plan and design a policy that will pay 70% of the cost of care at your age 80. Steve, where did you ever come up with that? What was the average age people need care? 80. Why 70%? Why not 100? Well, if you'd like to design 100, I'm all for it. I'd be happy to sell you that policy. But why 70? Well, because you probably have Social Security, pension, investment returns, other savings that can help make up the difference. So that 70% is a good starting point. So again, if we go back to what we said earlier, we talked about an average of $5,000 for home care and $5,000 for assisted living. I'm going to take nursing home off the planning discussion. Just based on what I said, we can, bring that back into the discussion if you wanted to, but the likelihood of you going into a nursing home is so small. So if you're, let's just say 62, the $5,000 doubled by the time you were age 80. Long-term care costs are increasing at 4%, so that means everything doubles in 18 years. So from 62 to 80, the $5,000 became $10,000. So now I've got a number that I'm trying to solve for, $10,000 a month. So if I have a policy that will pay for $7,000 or 70%, that puts you in a pretty good financial position. The insurance is taking the sting out of the cost, and that's really what it's designed to do. I could go on, but that's probably a good summary, huh?
That's a good summary.
Okay.
Thank you, Stephen.
You're very welcome.